Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has reaffirmed full support for Palestinian people's legitimate rights on the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The official spokesperson for the presidency stated that President Sisi sent a message to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas expressing Egypt's unwavering support, particularly in light of the Gaza crisis. He highlighted the international community's failure to stop the violence and stressed the importance of recognizing the Palestinian struggle for their rights. President Sisi called for revitalizing the two-state solution based on international resolutions aiming to end the occupation and establish a Palestinian state along the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Egypt has reiterated its unwavering solidarity with the Palestinian people, commending their steadfast resilience in the face of systematic violations by Israeli occupation forces, which continue under the international community's watch. Egypt renewed its call for collective international efforts to end the Israeli occupation, enabling Palestinians to establish their independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. Marking International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, Egypt expressed regret that the occasion coincides with the brutal aggression Palestinians currently endure. The country emphasized the urgent need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and unconditional access to humanitarian aid. The Israeli occupation has committed a new massacre in the town of Beit Lahia in the northern Gaza Strip, killing at least 10 civilians and injuring others. The occupation bombed the house that shelters displaced people on the Manshia street in Beit Lahia, killing and wounding several civilians. Israeli forces also targeted civilians who tried to recover the bodies of victims and transport the wounded to the hospital using a wagon pulled by a sledgehammer, raising the number of victims to at least 10. The civil defense in Gaza has urgently called for fuel supplies to resume its operations effectively. The organization revealed that 99% of its capabilities are currently disabled due to the lack of fuel. It also reported an inability to provide ambulances services, citing severe shortage in essential supplies. Additionally, the civil defense accused the Israeli occupation forces of targeting ambulances during their movement in northern Gaza. 12 civilians have been killed and others were injured in the ongoing Israeli strikes on the central and northern Gaza Strip. Local sources reported that 3 civilians were killed and 5 injured in an Israeli shelling near the industrial area of Tell al-Hawa, southwest of Gaza City. Another 3 were killed and 5 injured in an Israeli airstrike on Wahda Street. 5 more civilians died and others were injured in a bombing of a house belonging to the Dahdouha family in the Nusayrat refugee camp. Additionally, 8 civilians were injured in Israeli bombardment of a seaside area west of Deir al-Balah. Israeli occupation strikes have killed at least 30 Palestinians overnight in the Gaza Strip, most of them in the Nusayrat camp at the center of the enclave. Medics said they had recovered 19 bodies of Palestinians killed in the northern areas of Nusayrat. The rest were killed in the northern and southern areas of the Gaza Strip. Displaced Palestinians in Gaza City are struggling to find basic necessities after evacuating from the northern Gaza. Many have no option but to live in schools turned into shelters that lack food, clean water and other resources. Residents said earlier this month that the Israeli forces raided shelters for the displaced, forcing people out at gunpoint. First responders say they can barely operate because of the Israeli bombardment. Hunger experts have warned earlier this month that there is a strong likelihood that famine is imminent in parts of northern Gaza. Displaced Palestinians queued up with empty pots to receive cooked food from a charity-run kitchen in the central Gaza Strip city of Deir el-Balah. Charities like these are a lifeline as displaced Palestinians struggle to find food due to the limitation on the amount of aid entering the Gaza Strip. Israel's Minister of Housing and Construction has said the Jewish settlement of Gaza was an appropriate response to the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant for the country's Prime Minister and former Defense Minister. Israel media stated that the minister repeatedly endorsed re-establishing Jewish settlement in the Gaza Strip after the war ends. The United Nations has marked the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The UN highlighted two harrowing facts on this International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The ongoing Palestinian refugee crisis remains the world's longest unresolved issue, and Gaza has endured the most intense bombardment of any civilian population since World War II in the past year. Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Albares has stated that the Middle East requires peace, not weapons. Albares denied allegations of Spain selling arms to Israel, confirming that no new arms export licenses have been issued since October 2023. He also revealed that ships carrying weapons bound for Israel are prohibited from docking at Spanish ports. Additionally, Albares underscored the critical role of the UNRWA, describing it as indispensable for delivering humanitarian aid to 2 million Gaza residents and ensuring regional stability.
El Consejo de Ministros ha aprobado el nombramiento de un nuevo embajador de España en Argentina.
The UN Human Rights Office representative for the occupied Palestinian territories, Ajis Sangai, has stated that the United Nations has been unable to deliver any humanitarian aid to northern Gaza due to repeated refusals by Israeli authorities to allow aid convoys to pass. During a weekly press conference at the United Nations office in Geneva, Sangai emphasized the severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza, warning that the population is facing the imminent threats of hunger, disease, and death. He noted that approximately 70,000 people are still trapped in northern Gaza, unable to receive vital supplies. The World Food Programme, the WFP, has stated today that all bakeries in central Gaza Strip have been forced to shut down due to a critical shortage of supplies. In a statement on X, the WFP said that bread, which had been often the only food source for many families in Gaza, is now out of reach for residents. The WFP urgently appealed for the sale and uninterrupted delivery of essential humanitarian aid to Gaza, underscoring the urgent need to provide access to vital supplies for the vulnerable population. More than 60 British MPs have sent a letter to the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy, urging him to impose sanctions on Israel over repeated violations of international law. The letter references the International Court of Justice advisory opinion from July, which declared Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory unlawful and called for it to end as soon as possible. The MPs are urging the UK government to impose sanctions and take over other actions to implement the ICJ's ruling. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, has stressed that the plight of the Palestinian refugees, remains the longest unresolved refugee crisis in the whole world. UNRWA emphasized that since October 2023, the Gaza Strip has been experiencing the most intense bombardment of a civilian population since the World War II. The agency further highlighted the critical need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza to halt the devastating impact on civilians.